Hello everybody, look at this gorgeous sunshine. So today we're going to delve back into the video that I reviewed earlier on a few weeks ago now by Nurturing Discontent, talking about things that she thinks should be taken away from schools or that we should stop normalizing about schools. If you missed the first one, it is here. Go and check it out. Things might make a bit more sense if you've seen that. If you have seen that and you're all caught up, then let's enjoy.
Leads me on to my second normalised school thing that is actually having negative effects. Another one that has been around a long time and seen as completely normal. You will know this one. Reading schemes.
What? What? Reading schemes. Getting children to read.
Reading incentives, reading rewards, whatever you want to call it. I know these.
I'm noticing a trend. Anything that involves a reward, an extrinsic reward, is bad. Before I have opinions on this because I was English lead in one of my primary schools and it was my job. Very few children in the school were reading for pleasure. Very few children now read for pleasure. It's a really big problem. And so it was my job to address that and fix it. And I did. I got children reading for pleasure because they wanted to. I'm not going to get into too much of that now. We'll see what she has to say. But
these are still going on. I've heard directly from people with children in schools who are part of these reading schemes.
Again, she's heard from people in schools. None of this is first-hand accounts. Interesting.
We are talking, once a child reads a certain number of books, they get free cinema tickets. That seems to be a popular one right now. They get a certificate. I'm sure there's a badge involved at some point. The schools love a badge. I have seen an example online of a school who, if a class collectively, which is also another problem, reaches a reading goal, they get extra playtime. I know, it's so wrong.
And I find myself in agreement with her. On the whole class reward thing, I don't think any child should be responsible for the whole class reward. I mean, I also don't agree that a whole class reward should be extra playtime, but maybe that's another video. Yeah, that's not fair. If you're going to reward reading, then reward it individually, because individually the children are going to be reading, which is what I did. I'll get into this now. So I had a class and I said to them, you read a book. And they were 10, 11 years old, so they would read a book, and I said to them, it should take you about 2 weeks to read a chapter book, 100-page chapter book. You read the book, you write your review slip, literally a couple of sentences, and they were all different. Sometimes they were drawing a comic strip of what they liked the best. Sometimes they were saying what they would recommend, all these things. They'd bring that slip to me, we would staple it into a little loop. I don't know what I'm showing you, there's nothing there, into a little loop, and that would then become part of their reading paper chain. And for every 5 links in their paper chain, they would get a dip into my bag of crap. I didn't say it was the bag of crap to them. They thought it was the bag of wonder. But various things I'd picked up from expos and, anywhere I could get free stuff like pens, badges, stickers, key rings. I had a tablet in there once, an actual tablet. And I just chuck it in the bag and they would get 5 seconds. They weren't allowed to look. Hand goes in, they pull it out. One person pulled out a tiny rubber duck and they were like, oh, and I said, you don't want it? I said, no, I do want it. Because it's been given value. They know that it's a reward. And this was so popular that children from other classes started coming to me to say, how can I get on to the reading chains? So I then introduced it throughout the entire school. We went year 6, year 2, year 4, 5. We even introduced it in year 1 in the summer term and year 3, of course. And the kids loved it. And at the end of the year, they got to take home their reading chains. And some of them were huge and some of them weren't very long, but everyone had read a book. And that's the important thing. Getting children to read is not easy. It's not easy because at school, you don't have time to listen to children read individually. But I've talked a lot. Let's see why she doesn't like reading.
I feel like I need to insert Toto Wolf right now. No, Mike, that was so not right. It's not right. If you're a Formula 1 fan, you will get that. Sorry. And apparently in the States, there was a reading scheme by Pizza Hut where if children read a
in the States, it's irrelevant to UK education.
certain amount of books, they would get free slices of pizza.
I'm going to skip ahead because now she brings up that guy that she was talking about and he talks about his research about rewarding children for reading doesn't make readers. But it's based in America, and then they talk about the Pizza Hut thing. So we're going to skip ahead to
Learning about recently has its pitfalls, but that's by the by. She has a blog post called Please Don't Pay Children to Read. And whether that be in the form of certificates, stickers, points, or cinema tickets, she argues that offering a reward to children that has to be earned suggests to children, counterintuitively perhaps, that at an early age, that reading is an unpleasant task that they have to be bribed to do.
Interesting point. Interesting point. And I can see where she's coming from. That makes sense. That's an interesting point. Do I agree with it? I'm not sure. Because again, it's something that does have to be done. And a lot of children don't like reading. They don't have the imagination for it anymore. They've been sat in front of screens for too long. But I think if you can, again, we're back to creating that dopamine hit early on. And it's difficult to do it for a book because there aren't bright lights and sounds going off everywhere. So you need to create that dopamine hit so that later on, they won't be completely averse to reading a book. When I were a lad back in school, I got through the reading scheme as quickly as possible. By the time I was 8, I had read every book I had to read in the school. I'd completed the reading scheme by the time I was 8, so year 4, which meant I was now a free reader. I could read any book I liked. I read 3 books for the rest of my school career, and that was all in year 6. And that was My Girl, Hook, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles novelization of the film. But I love to read now. I love to read now, and as a teenager, I loved to read, but as a young child, just wasn't that bothered. So I think you have to create that early dopamine hit. There needs to be some sort of foundation to build on. So yeah, so that's my thing there.
Children should read because they love reading, not because they are getting rewarded for it.
But children are not born with an inherent love of books. You have to create that love of books. And if you can't do it by reading with them in the classroom, which schools are very time poor, I got into a lot of trouble for insisting the first half hour after lunchtime every day was just for silent reading. How are you going to build that love of reading unless you incentivize someone?
This goes back to Alfie's punish by rewards. We are extrinsically motivating children to read and not developing the intrinsic motivation that will lead to a love of reading that we so often talk about, that we want to instill a love of reading in children. Yes, children may read 8 books in 8 weeks. In that respect, if that's what you're looking for.
In my teaching career, the greatest encouragement I gave children was reading with them. That half hour after lunch every day, I would read with them. We would all get our books out and I would read. I also didn't penalize them for reading on a Kindle. And if they had a Kindle on their phone, I would let them read their Kindle. One of my year 6 children, 10 years old, was reading Pride and Prejudice because she had it on the Kindle on her phone. I didn't mind, she was reading, it was fine. And I would read with them. And then every now and again, I would pick up a book that the kids were reading and read a paragraph of it. We had reading races where I'd get 4 copies of the same book and challenge children to beat me in a race to finish it. One of my year 6 girls, absolutely fantastic girl, she was reading Zoe Suggs' first book. I think it was called Boy Online, something like that. And I criticized it heavily. I giggled about it. I read a paragraph in a very, very, sorry Zoe, in a very disingenuous voice. And she looked at me very bravely and said, have you read it? Have you actually read it? And I hadn't. So I said, right, there's 3 copies in this class. When you finish, I'm going to read one. Who's going to read it with me? And 2 of the boys who were giggling along said, yeah, we'll read it as well. And we all read that book, and you know what? It wasn't that bad. So well done there, Zoe. I've not read any of your others, but that was good. But reading with the children encouraged them to read. And yes, to be fair to her, that required no kind of reward structure, unless you consider attention as a reward, because there's no such thing as a reward-free encouragement. Everyone gets awarded for something.
The scheme and the incentives have worked. But is this going to create children who are lifelong readers and do it for their own pleasure or because they want to go out and find answers to something that they intrinsically want to find out about? You know, I absolutely love reading now as an adult, but I didn't develop that love of reading until my 30s. Previously, I hated reading. I thought of myself as not a reader. I don't think I ever finished one of the books that was set in school. So,
discounting what she's just said, surely. Maybe if she'd been given a certificate for reading a book. Who knows? We're going to skip on a little bit because she's just talking about the book she's currently reading, which I don't think is very relevant. So we're going to skip to this bit.
That that strain them, and tick off, I've read at home, so the rest of my class can have extra playtime. And imagine if you're that one child struggling to read at home, and the rest of the class identifies that you're the reason that they haven't reached their 80% quota of children reading. And
yes, this absolutely, if I could high five her through the screen, I would absolutely agree with this. This pennies or marbles in a jar or any kind of whole class reward system that relies on all the children being happy little automatons and doing the right thing all the time, disagree with it so much. And the rewards attached to that, like, oh, cinema night, you can watch a film for the afternoon. No, you're at school, learn. No one watch Shrek. Extra playtime. You are at school. If you want to take the children outside to learn something, great. You can do so much maths and English and geography outside, but don't just give them an extra playtime because it's the end of term and you're tired. That's ridiculous. And also, don't put the... Ooh, I'm getting like her now, you see. Don't put the burden of pressure onto the children. That's not fair. Because some children go to school to learn maths, English, science. Some children go to school to learn, I need to sit quietly for half an hour and not poke the people or bite the people next to me. And that is a tough lesson to learn for some children, and they go there to do that. This is why a lot of these homeschool children are withdrawn from school, because the schools aren't sympathetic to that kind of learning. It's all very academic in schools, and that much I disagree with. But yeah, you can tell I'm all riled up. I agree with her on this one. Stop making the entire class responsible for one reward, and along with that, stop making one or two children responsible for not getting that award, because kids, they are clever. We said earlier on, kids are clever, and they are ruthless when they want to be. They will say, oh, it was her fault, it was his fault that we didn't get it, and that kind of stigma sticks with a child. I am on her side with this. So there you go, that's part 2. There is a part 3 that I might make at some point. It's all there, I just have to edit it together. So if you've enjoyed this, let me know. Little like and a comment down below, that'd be great. Next week, it's back to relatively normal, talking about school-based topics and things like that. But until then, look after yourselves, check in on your friends, and remember, you can do this. You're awesome.